So hello everyone from Green-Mopeds in London. So today we're going to give you a static review of the new model from NIU called the MQiGT. This specific one is called the MQiGT Model 30 standard range, and we'll explain what that means as we go around. And as we have some other bikes from NIU here, our demo bikes, we thought we'd compare a bit of the features and functions to this bike versus the others in the range. So we've got an NQiGTS Sport, an MQi Plus Sport, and then a UQiGT Pro. So as we usually do, we'll go around highlighting some of the features of the bikes, comparing them to each other, and hopefully that will help you make an informed decision. So let's get to it. So I guess the place to start is, where does it fit? Which is actually quite a good question. So NIU in Europe now have up to 22 models. Okay. In the UK we have 12, including this one and the 45 version, which is coming next month. Okay, when NIU started in the UK, they had a single-seater M, they had the N, which was based on this bike, but 28 miles an hour, and then the NGT was the sort of flagship. Then that was supplemented by a U, which was still is a sort of tiny little thing, 20-mile range, but still 28 mile an hour. Then they did the renaming and added some more models. So this is one of those new models at the time, which was called the UQiGT Pro. The single-seater M was replaced by this one, which became the NQi Plus Sport. The NGT had 14-inch wheels added and became the NQiGTS Pro. And then they added in this one, which was the same to all intents and purposes, but it had EVE batteries. The net being that it had 15 miles, or it has 15 miles less range than the NQiGTS Pro. Okay. Now they are adding in this one, the MQiGT. Okay, and they're also giving us a taste of how the naming convention is going to be changed again. Okay, so just as they added the QI into the naming convention, they are now changing the Sport and Pro suffixes to standard and extended range. Okay, so this one, the MQiGTS Sport, the EVE based, will become the NQiGTS standard range. So any bike based upon EVE will be called standard range, and any bike based upon Panasonic will become the extended range. Okay, and in Europe, as I said, that's how you get to 22 models. So every model has been doubled up to become a standard or extended range, including the Cargo, the U, every model. But we're only getting 12, as I said, including this one. So this one is the MQiGT Model 30 standard range, which means it has EVE batteries. There is in fact a Model 30 extended range with Panasonic, but we're not getting that one. What we are getting though is the MQiGT Model 45 extended range, but not the standard range, so the Panasonic. So essentially the importer has decided to only pick a few models from the entire choice that they have, and they are using on the M models the speed and the battery to separate them. Okay, and I guess if you brought out both the Model 30 standard and extended range and the Model 45 standard and extended range, if you looked at the specs, you will see them encroaching upon the NQi Sport and Pro and then the NQiGTS Sport and Pro. So in some respects it's actually good that we have a bit less choice. Okay, but as you can see, if you just look at the size of it, it is now the biggest bike in their range, which is possibly where some of this confusion is coming. Okay, because before the N series was the biggest bike, and now this Model M has become the biggest bike. So you can see that if you look along the back here, I've lined up all of the wheels at the back, and then if you go along the front, you can see, for example, firstly, you can see how much bigger the seat is. So the seat is 30% bigger than this seat. Okay. However, some of that isn't actually usable. As you can see here, this is raked and this is not. Okay, so you are getting the impression that there's a lot bigger seat, but some of it you can't actually use. But of course, It's certainly wider, that's for sure. Probably more comfortable, okay, and certainly compared to the Model M, okay. But if you look at the front of it, you'll see how much more it sort of sticks out than the other bikes. Okay, you can't even see the Model M because it's got 10-inch wheels as well. This one's got 14-inch wheels. Essentially, there's a lot of things that they've taken off of the NQiGTS. So, for example, its motor is the motor from this bike. It's the 3.1 kilowatt hub motor from Bosch. Okay, so it is the same motor as this. It's also the same controller as the NQiGTS. Okay, so they are borrowing things from it. There's obviously new things as well. And in fact, the most significant new thing is actually the battery. Okay, so if you remember that the standard range bike is using EVE batteries. Okay, this one from the MQi Sport is a Panasonic battery. This one from the NQiGTS Sport is also EVE because it's blue. And what you'll notice is, while they're all going to be the same voltage within their model, so these are 60 volt in the N series and NGTs, these are 48 within the Model M series. What they've now also done is, because they've got EVE batteries, they've given them different ratings. So here you can see 48 volt, 31 amp hour. Okay, this is 48 volt, 42 amp hour. Okay, so what I hear you say, the net is range. Okay, so if you are having a standard range bike with EVE batteries, no matter what model, you will see that it has lower rated batteries, and lower rated batteries means range. So for example, the difference between the NQiGTS Sport and Pro, everything else is the same apart from EVE and Panasonic, is that this bike has these batteries for the EVE, 26 amp hour, and on the Panasonic based one it's 35 amp hour. The cells are the same, everything else is the same, but because you've got a higher rated battery, you get about 15 mile more range. That is ultimately the difference between the Sport and Pro, 15 miles. Okay, this one is quite interesting again, because the difference between these two 31 amp hour batteries and this 42 amp hour battery, you would think that because you've got two of them, there would be a lot bigger difference in range. But in actual fact, the quoted range of these two batteries is 43 miles for both of them. So one battery is about 20 miles. Okay, this one battery, its quoted range is about 37. Okay, so in other words, two batteries with a lower rating has gained me only about 6 miles than one. Okay, so when you get to the extended range version of this bike, you're going to get two of these batteries in it. That's the difference. Okay, and as you can see, if this is doing about high 30s, and this is doing low 40s for two, you can see that that's why you'll get more range when you add two of these together. Okay, so that is what you're actually doing. While we're here, just point out some other things. So you've obviously got a bit of space underneath the seat here. Probably not a chain, but a disc lock, waterproof trousers. This is the new diagnostic cable that is coming out for us dealers to analyse the bike, so they've changed it from the old system. Down here you might just see a fan. Obviously they feel that they need to possibly cool down this bike. No other NIU has that. Okay, you might have just heard it turn itself off, so that is obviously a feature of this bike. Along with this bike, it's just literally just done the same thing. Okay, but now if we look at the sort of dash layout. Okay, so the first thing to point out is actually it's keyless, so I don't actually use that key to turn on the bike. That key lock here is only to open the seat and to put on the steering lock, so you don't actually need it to ride the bike, but obviously you should have it. See, around here you've got standard stuff, USB port, bag hook. You've got, you know, quite a bit of foot space, but we'll come back to that. So here you can see the dash. Okay, so you've got your two batteries laid out, you've got your modes, cloud connected as before, and then interestingly they've added in a second start stop button. and I'm yet to work out why you need two. So this button here actually turns, as you can see, that it goes from off to on. Okay, but if it's off, the throttle is dead, and if it's on and the ready light isn't there, the throttle is still dead. Okay, but only when I press the ready button, as I did before, is the throttle now active. So I have to say I can't quite work out why they've done that, why you need two buttons. They say it's a safety feature, but I don't quite see it. If the ready button seemed to work fine before, but they've decided to add it. On this side, you've got the standard sort of stuff, although the buttons are different. You've got your headlights, you've got your hazard lights, cruise control. As I noted on the ride review, having these buttons above the indicator sometimes means that you catch them because you think you're pressing that to cancel the indicators, and you actually end up pressing the hazard lights, but that's by the by. On the other bikes, on all of the other bikes, you've got things beneath, okay, or on the other side. Okay, but anyway, yeah, so nice little dash layout. You've got an integrated screen, not a separate one that you see on these bikes. You can get a windscreen for this bike, and it's already got holes for the actual arms that will go onto the screen. While we're on accessories, obviously this can have a rack and all of that, but it also has this ability to have sort of bumper rails put around the sort of potentially vulnerable places on the bike. Okay, so it's like a tubing, metal tubing that goes around here to stop you actually wrecking the bodywork if you fall over. Quite a keen requirement from CBT schools and people like that. While we're on the bodywork, one thing to note is obviously on the NGTs, you've got these push-out little footrests, okay? Whereas on this bike, you have it integrated. And this is one big mat, okay, this thing here, as you can see. But they've now got rid of the pegs and they've replaced it with actual footrests integrated into the body. That could possibly be quite an expensive thing to repair versus just swapping over a peg if you happen to damage it. Okay, but that's a design choice they've made. Okay, so about charging. So you will notice or recognise these charging type splitter boxes from the NGT range, but marked in blue. Part of that is because this charger is new. As you can see, it's got quite a chunky cable on it and this Chigori connector. The reason why it's got a chunky cable on it is because it's rated at 26 amps. The one from the NQiGTS was 12 amps. Okay, so you would think, great, I can charge at 26 amps. That must mean the charging time is, you know, minutes. But unfortunately what happens is they rate the charger down to 9 amps for one battery and then 11 amps if you're charging two. But that still means that this is now the fastest charging NIU bike. So you can charge these batteries in 4.5 hours, okay? So based upon, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours for the other bikes. Okay, so a big improvement, okay? At the front, you'll notice also that we have disc brakes, just like on all the other NIU bikes. But this one, even though it's a 28 mile an hour bike and doesn't, the law or the rules don't say that you must have CBS, they've got CBS, okay? So that means that when you squeeze the brake lever, it will apply pressure to the front and back wheels at the same time. Okay, it's not ABS, it's CBS. The reason they've done that probably on this Model 30 and not just on the Model 45 is I expect that this bike is a restricted Model 45. Okay, so all they've done is they've made it go slower than the Model 45. Everything else would be made the same. And the reason I say that is because if you come back to the bike, when you go into ready mode and you whiz up the power, you see it goes over 30 in dynamic mode. And if I go into sport mode, it doesn't go any faster. Okay, so in other words, why do I need 3 modes? Well, we tested this, and if you want access to more power, sport mode does seem to give it to you. We tested it up a hill in Richmond, and it does seem to go up the hill more easily in sport mode. But if you're whizzing around at 28, and you're on flat and level ground, there's no reason to be in one or the other. They both seem to give you 28 miles an hour. Okay, so the conclusion from that is that in the Model 45, they will just release the restrictor on the sport mode, and you'll get to 45. Okay, so obviously some of the other things that it's got are fairly standard across the range. So it's still got the app, it's cloud connected, still got the alarm and the GPS built in for you to track it, etc., etc. As for colours, on the NIU website it says there are 5 colours. This is the grey, there's a white and a black, and then there is a red and a blue. We are not getting the red and the blue in the UK on this bike. We might be getting it on the Model 45. But so it's grey, white or black. Okay. Price, this bike is 2,700. So compare that to 2,156, I think it is, for the MQi Plus Sport. So £300 or £400 more. What's interesting is if you compare it to other bikes in the new range, so the NQi Sport, so the Eve-based Model N, as in the 28 mile an hour, 1.5 kilowatt bike is 2,400. So it's £300 more for this bike. What you're getting is not a lot more range, but you are getting a bigger bike, more powerful, 3 kilowatts versus 1.5 kilowatts, faster charging time, more comfortable for 2 people, okay, for £300 more. Happens to be called a Model M. If you go to the MQiGT 45 extended range, then you are sort of stepping on the toes of the NQiGTS Pro, because they are both about the same price. Okay, so then your question is, well, which has got the most range? And it will be the NQiGTS Pro with the Panasonic batteries will have more range than the MQiGT extended range. And the reason for that is because they've got the same controller and the same motor. The real reason for that is that this one is 60 volt, 35 amp hours, and this one will be 2 48 volt, 42 amp hour batteries. So you really get to see what a difference the batteries make, because they are the same bike in terms of controller and power. Okay, so if range is your ultimate goal, then it will still be the NQiGTS Pro, or extended range, whatever they happen to call it. Okay, that is the easiest way to cover it off. If range is what you really want, it is still this bike in the Pro version. Okay, if it's potentially seat space, maybe, or you're a bigger framed person, then it's possibly the MGT. Interestingly, we did have someone yesterday who had read that the MGT was sort of like the bike to go for, but she was only about 5'5", and because of the seat height, as you can see, it's running on 14-inch wheels. Because of the seat height, she could barely touch the ground, or in fact she couldn't touch the ground with both feet on this bike. So that might be another consideration. You have to then go back down to something like this if you're 5.5 feet, something like that. Okay, so there are reasons to pick each bike amongst the entire range. It's just understanding what the differences are, I guess. Okay, so in summary then, 3 kilowatts, 4.5 hour charging, 14-inch wheels, 115 kilos of weight, 2 Eve batteries, 31 amp hour, each giving about 20 mile range, okay, when used together. 28 miles an hour. Forthcoming is the same bike, but with 2 batteries out of the MQi Plus Sport. And we will, when we get hold of that one, we will obviously give it a review as well. So hopefully I've covered everything off. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. You're more than welcome to book a test ride down in southwest London, and please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you get updates on all the other bikes that we review. So thanks very much.